Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Aravaipa Rides podcast. I am your race director, Aaron. We have a really special episode today. I have two people in the studio with me. I've got Phil and Kaitlyn. Welcome.
Hey.
Yeah.
Kaitlyn works for Ability 360 down here in Phoenix. Phil is one of their sponsored riders as well as an ambassador for Ability 360 as well. Is that correct? Did I get
Yes.
it the right terminology? Ambassador?
Yes, ambassador, and work with Lasher Sport as well.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, let's get some background on both of you so we can introduce you to our audience. So, Kaitlyn, we'll start with you, ladies first. Tell us a little bit about you. When we talked on the phone a couple of days ago, you said something about, and I swear I heard it correctly, 2 Olympics. But when you look on your Instagram, It says 4 times. So tell us a little bit about you, and goodness gracious, don't leave out the Olympics.
Well, thank you very much for having us here for this podcast. I think both Phil and I were super honored to be here to be able to represent a little bit of what adaptive mountain biking is and talk about that. But yeah, so I was born and raised in Wisconsin. When I was 7, I was involved in a motor vehicle accident. I was just wearing a lap belt in the middle seat, and I got whipped forward, so I sustained a spinal cord injury, and
Okay.
that's how I pretty much ended up in the chair. And my family was super active. Like my mom and dad were both like marathon runners, and my brothers are marathon. Like both, we're just always been active. And I remember like going to like big races and stuff with them. And so of course, when I got in the chair, I was going to be an athlete. And so like my first love was absolutely wheelchair basketball, and I played that
Very cool.
for a while. I mean, I feel like everybody's kind of introduced to that sport. I think in the beginning when you first have like an illness or an accident
Rugby or
something.
basketball, depending on your injury. Yeah.
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 So I started there and then got into like some hand cycling and some did like the road racing and stuff like that. I pretty much tried everything, but what really stuck for me was wheelchair tennis. And the biggest reason for that is when I got to high school, I don't know, it was just I really wanted to have like a Letterman's jacket, and
That was the coolest thing back then.
right, everybody had
Absolutely.
one, and I was like, but also just really wanted to be part of a team, and I felt like basketball, you got to have other people with disabilities to play. I'm going to be running over everybody's feet. And so tennis is one of the few sports where you could play integrated. So the only rule difference is the wheelchair player is allowed 2 bounces. And basically that just kind of levels the playing field because we can't really physically move laterally. So I got into that. And then there's like this whole professional tour. So I played wheelchair tennis for about 20 years professionally.
Wow.
I had like sponsors and traveled the world, played in 3 of the 4 Grand Slams. So we were fully integrated. So like I was up there in the same locker room as Venus and Serena Williams, and
Wow.
hitting and warming up next to Roger Federer. So pretty awesome stuff. But I recently kind of found my new passion, which has been like I've been completely fulfilled in helping others with disabilities and help them like find what motivates them and like what keeps them going. Because I think, and Phil, I don't know, you can touch on this, but when you have something like that happens to you, it changes you for sure. And sometimes it's hard to find any motivation to continue. And for some people, it's a lot harder than others. And
Yeah.
I feel blessed that I got hurt pretty young because I didn't really know much better. And so I just kind of went on with it. But after 4 Paralympics, now I get to help others achieve their dreams as a recreational therapist at Ability 360. And then I also run our outdoor programs. So we do everything from like a big Grand Canyon rafting trip every year to the adaptive mountain biking, hiking, rock climbing, all kinds of really cool stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you touched on it, but I do want to ask you
yeah.
more, right? So what sport in the Olympics?
So I played. I went for 3 Paralympics in wheelchair tennis. I went
Okay.
to Athens in 2004. I was like 17. Beijing in 2008, and then I missed 2012 because this is a whole other side story. But I opened a self-serve frozen yogurt shop in Flagstaff.
Okay.
So with my partner, and then I took a little break. And then went to Rio in 2016 to like finish it off there. And
Very
then I don't know, I decided to get in a boat, and I always kayaked and canoed and stuff. So Paracanoe was introduced, like it debuted at the Rio Paralympics in
Okay.
2016. I went to the event. A friend of mine was competing in it. I was like, wow, that's really cool. I wonder if I could do that. And so
Yep.
I don't know, happened to be we're at closing ceremonies and I'm sitting next to the US coach for this new paracanoe thing. And she's like, why don't you come to my house in Florida and see what it's all about? So I did that. And then, and then went to 2021 or 2020 in Tokyo. And I actually ended up blowing out my shoulder and tore my
Oh no.
cerebrospinatus and had shoulder surgery 2 years ago. So recovering, coming back, and that's when I kind of fell in love with adaptive mountain biking because it was really good for my recovery.
Very cool.
She's our Trevor Kennison over here in Arizona, our superstar. So
Amazing. I do. It's
always
like I feel like
proud.
I'm amongst royalty here.
Yep,
This is
yep.
I'm not sure if I have been close to a couple of like
I'm
where they
sure.
walked by me kind of close
Yeah.
Olympians, but having them sit in the room with me and actually talking is totally different. So I'm honored that you're here.
Oh, thanks for
Very
having
cool.
me.
Yeah. Phil, let's get a little bit of background on you before we kind of launch into adaptive mountain biking. Let
Sure.
everybody know who you are.
Yeah. Long story short, when COVID hit and everything was shut down, it kind of forced us all outdoors. And that's when this all kind of started for me. Here in Arizona, it's not just all desert, contrary to popular opinion. There's a lot of beauty and green. You just go 2 hours north and get a little higher elevation. And Payson, where the Mogollon Rim I was particularly fond of. And I'd go up there every weekend. Just fell in love out there. Would just be out there in peace. Sometimes with friends, family. A lot of times on my own. It was just kind of like my zen zone, and I loved it. And one day I went a little too deep, and I got stuck. And as a wheelchair user, I can't hike or walk, or
Right.
I could walk a little bit. I'm a walking quad, but I need support, right?
Okay.
Walker, canes, wheelchair, things of that sort. So it was crazy. I was stuck in the middle of the woods, no reception, obviously.
Sure.
First thing I did was, obviously I survived. I'm here, was switch from AT&T to Verizon. So
Oh, really?
yeah, and
Okay.
Verizon would have actually worked if I would have had it. But
Oh wow.
anyways, so I'm out there honking the horn for 4 hours and, until it dies, no one could hear me. I'm in a hunting road, right? Someone may or may not come for a day, a week. I don't know. I got
Right.
a pack of crackers and like half a cup of water. And I'm like, well, do I eat it and hope someone finds me, or do I, eat it and no one finds me? I got no energy to crawl or whatever I got to do to get out of there, right? However I'm going to get out of there. So I start doing the math in my head, and it's getting dark, like I'm like, all right, well, I got to try to make an effort in the morning when the sun comes up to try to make my way out, whether it takes me a week to crawl out of there, right? So this is how it all started, right?
Yeah.
So this is crazy how this works. But so in the middle of the night, elk are like, they can't sleep. I don't know if there's bears out there. I mean, it's the woods of the rim.
Yeah.
So I try to lower my anxiety as best as I can, get whatever. I need sleep, right? But whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
Some psyching yourself up to take this journey. And the next morning, I take my wheelchair, use it as a walker, step by step, try to make my way out of there. And first thing I had to go up was this crazy hill.
Oh geez.
And this isn't like some paved trail. You're in the woods, right? There's ruts and roots and
Right.
off-camber stuff. So crazy, right? But I got up it. I looked down. I saw what I did. You get a little less scared, a little more confidence, and that's the only way you take on fear, right? You got to
Sure.
punch in the face, right? No other way to do it other than do the thing it says it can't do it. So about halfway through, I'm like, taking some steps, sitting, taking a bite of a cracker, sip of water. About halfway through, I'm like, you know what? I hope no one finds me. I need to do this for my own faith in myself, God, just confidence. It was a life-changing experience.
Yeah.
It took me 6 hours to get out of there.
Wow.
And, I flagged someone down. I'm like, you got Verizon? I got to make a call. Call my poor mother. I tell this story because that's how this all started. In my
Okay.
darkest moment, you got to make a decision. You either get too scared to go out in the woods again,
Yep.
or you just get better tools. So
Yeah.
I got the Jeep Rubicon,
Okay.
and that's when I did my research, and I discovered the adaptive mountain bike, and I'm like, wow, this is a game changer. This is what I've been wanting to do, but in a more intimate setting.
Mm-hmm.
Knew about road bikes before, but I was like, that's boring rolling through neighborhoods. I want the full-on experience. So I did what I did. I ended up getting the Lasher Sport hand cycle at the time. This was 3 years ago now, we're talking.
Yep.
And it totally changed my life. I went on this 20-state, 6-country tour of just sheer stoke and passion, met the coolest people in the world, and just, I had no agenda. I just had more access to experiences, ability to exercise, obviously meeting people now. I mean, everyone on the trail is just so stoked to see you. Sure. Unlike in a wheelchair where they don't know what to say, awkward glances, all that.
Okay.
On the bike, they're like, dude, is that a full suspension motor? What the heck, bro? Like, you're riding, hanging out, now you're having a beer and a burger. And that was the experience. And it changed my life, right? So now I've kind of dedicated my life, you know, find my way back full circle to working for Lasher Sport, company that built the bike that changed my life. Made sense, right? So just could affect it a lot more and having an impact on, you know, working with people like yourself to set up races, Todd with Epic Rides, right? With Kaitlyn and 360, you know, taking people out on rides, doing skills training, got my certification. Same thing with Truman and High Country, right? They do great work up north, right? We've got a race team that we're doing right now. These are our shirts from the Epic Race Tour of the White Mountains last year.
Yep.
And just blowing up the sport and getting more butts on bikes and doing whatever we can, because there's so much meaning, right? You find your passion and you align it with helping others, and now it's sustainable, right? So that's it, man. It changed my life and couldn't be more happy or doing more meaningful things. So
wow, that is amazing. I had no idea that story was coming.
I forgot about that.
I'm going by Kaitlyn's face that she didn't too.
I remember, but I forgot.
It was intense.
It was really intense.
It was more intense than going through paralysis, trust me. Terrified, everything. But it's always darkest before the dawn, man. You just got to stick through it.
Yeah. So your story started recently, COVID 2020, right?
Yeah.
Were you active before?
I never even knew about adaptive mountain biking.
Okay.
I just
wasn't your thing.
It wasn't
in your
a lot of time, I mean, a lot of times the disability kind of directs you into what sport you're going to plug in, or like, you know, depending on what your function levels are, right?
Sure.
So for me, when I got the bike, I was like, all right, I could be competitive on this, like, right? It's kind of like my Iron Man suit, right? Like I put it on and I'm just shredding, right?
Truly, it is like that for you.
It's like, so adaptive Tony Stark.
Very cool. Awesome.
I think what we love so much about it is the fact that we can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere. And for so long, you know, being in a chair, I think we're pretty limited on, you know, the places that we can go outside.
Sure.
And the bike really can get you to some beautiful places that, you know, you can't really get to. So that, I think, for me is like you know,
100%.
You wanted to do, you know, so yeah.
It's and in that respect, it's not just an adaptive mountain bike, it's a mobility device,
tool,
right?
yeah.
It's a tool, right, for access, right? I've taken it to Santa Monica Pier, Renaissance festivals. I mean, I took the damn thing to Mardi Gras for crying out loud.
It's a pain in the butt at the Renaissance Festival in a chair, I'll say. But I can imagine it'd be better.
Yeah,
on
you're
the
rolling
bike.
around through the dirt, you're not blowing your shoulders out, you got some assist, and you know, I'll kind of pull my girlfriend on the back of the bike in her chair, right? You know, we actually did a procession in a 50s car show in Minneapolis that way. So
very cool.
You just meet people gravitate to, and your world expands.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really what it's about. It's about connection.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a catalyst for connection and inner transformation, right? Because it gets you outdoors. It's just as much of a mental health device as it is a mobility device or adaptive mountain bike.
Very cool. Well, we're talking about bikes, so let's just segue into it, because there's not just one adapted mountain bike out there, right? There's multiple different classes, different styles, different wheels. I mean, different everything, right? So let's take a moment to kind of talk. So you were talking about Lasher, the company that you work for, and the bike that you found after your incident. We'll give them some love, you know. So Lasher, talk about the Lasher, the bike that you have, other models that they might make. Tell us a little bit just about it. Jordan, for us in the studio, is going to be pulling up pictures here and there. I'm not sure if which ones he'll pull up at a time, but he'll pull them up, which we will add later on in post so that our viewers can see some of these pictures as well. But yeah, let's talk about the Lasher first, and we can talk about your bike and some of the others that are in between.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there she is right there for you to see.
Right.
She's a beaut. And, you know, it's the first thing that jumps out is it doesn't look like medical equipment. And that's a big part, right? Because when you're on it, you don't feel your disability. You have access to anything you want to have access to. It's a badass looking bike, right? I mean, it's got 1,000 watts of e-assist behind you. You could set it to increments of 10% from 0 to 100, right? It also has a throttle if you need that. So if you're, you know, a lot of times it's a trike, right? So you got to counterbalance and lean out of the bike to be able to stay on the bike, right? So it's having a throttle is effective when you're using the cranks to stabilize, and you don't want to be cranking and leaning, right?
Yeah.
In certain like off-camera situations. So it's got a throttle, it's got the e-assist, 1,000 watts, 25 amp battery, it's full suspension, which is huge, right? Because
Sure.
now you got about 130 mils of travel, independent A-arms in the back. It's not just a straight axle, right? So you've got the ability to get about 5.5 inches of articulation, right? So you could really get up on boulders and rocks, and it's incredible, right? It's able to do. So it's really good for cross country, XC, some technical downhill. It's good on as well,
Okay.
and just as a mobility device as well, right? So it's just been a game changer, right? In that sense for me when I found it, and so. Yeah, that's the bike I ride. It was easy for me to get in and out of. That was kind of one of the first reasons why I got it. And then it just took off from there as I learned
What's
it.
the model called?
So that one is the Lasher Sport full suspension. So there's
Okay.
kind of 3 versions. There's the FS1, 2, 3. Big difference is the intricacies of the suspension, right? How much
Okay.
controls you have on the compression settings,
Gotcha.
reservoir, things of that for more extreme downhill.
Yep.
And some drivetrain differences, colored tone. You could get 2 tones on there and really customize the bike. And,
Nice.
And then there's a couple other models, right? If you don't have quite the budget for something like that, there we've got a gravel version, right? Still e-assist throttles and everything, just no suspension. And then if you really like suffering, you got the non-e-assist version, non-suspension, but that's the most affordable, right? So we work with people on that, and got some different options, and do a lot of cool wheelchairs and off-road wheelchairs and stuff like
Tell
that
them
too.
how much that bike weighs. How much does the bike, I don't know, how much does the bike that doesn't have a motor on it weigh?
So the bike with the motor starting out is about 85 pounds. Without the
Okay.
motor,
Yeah, it's heavy. It's
take
heavy
off
bike.
the battery and
Right.
the motor, so you're like around 55 to 60, right? So big difference, right? It's heavier, but at the same time the assist is there, right? So kind of offsets it, right?
Sure.
I mean, I got a steel skid plate on mine that weighs more than the frame because I like to bounce off of Moab rocks, right?
There you go.
The weight is negligible because of the assist, but at the same time, you want to be mindful of it. So, yeah.
And then what was the crank version? The full analog? The weight on that.
The weight of the fully analog, the suspension doesn't weigh that much, right? So we're talking maybe about 10 pounds, right?
Okay.
If you take the shocks off, the frame's a little bit different. So I'd say about 55, 65, and 85.
Okay. Still heavy. I mean,
That's-
even still a heavy
Yep,
bike,
yep,
obviously,
yep.
right? For-
Well, I mean, there's a lot of kind of like the other bikes out there. I mean, they're upwards 150 to 200
sure.
pounds, right?
Yeah.
So I mean,
Sorry, wasn't a
relatively-
No,
judgment.
yeah.
Just comment.
No, just in terms of relative to what's out there in the
not bad.
sport, right? So,
Yep.
I mean, getting the weight down to have all the equipment you need is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you would consider the 3 versions that you were talking about, they'd be all good for competition if someone's in the competitive landscape.
Yeah, the first-
depending on what they wanted out
The
of the
gravel
bike and
version,
probably a
the ones with
budget.
the e-assist would be your 2 competition versions, right? Because you could really ramp it up and preserve your shoulders at the same time, right? That's kind of the biggest things. Mountain biking started maybe about 20 years ago with the one-off, which was the prone version.
That was my first bike.
That was your first
Yeah.
bike, right?
So
Yeah.
not that much fun.
Yeah, so you're prone actually. It's the closest one to an actual mountain bike because you're over the handlebars,
Okay.
but you're on your knees, right? And you're kind of
okay.
cranking underneath, and you got to kink your neck
Your
up.
neck
So
just hurts. And you don't get to really see anything. You're just like looking down.
it's a little awkward, but a lot of people swear by it, right? You
Okay.
could, especially pairs with upright function or good trunk function could really kind of pick those wheels up over the top and get kind of over rocks. So they all have advantages and disadvantages. And the fact that there's so many options, like there's Lasher Sport, there's Bowhead, there's Sport On,
The Madeline.
Madeline, that's
Is that
more.
even in the comp? Is
And
that-
reactive. Those are kind of the
Sorry, yeah.
4 big ones. And there's a ton of other ones like Madeline and some of the European bikes out there,
Yeah.
but those are going to be your 4 full suspension bikes that the majority of the community gets into. And the fact that when we're talking about such a niche sport,
Right.
that there's so many options, right? And within those, like Reactive's got several options. We got several options. Bowhead's got several options. Sport On's got several options. You're talking like over a dozen adaptive mountain bikes to choose from. And we haven't even gotten into the downhill gravity bikes, right? And
Right.
so there's a ton of options, right? You're not
Okay.
just boxed into one area.
Yeah.
And so depending on your terrain where you live, if you want to do more technical climbing, more flow trail, something in between,
Yeah.
and what your disability level is, you have a ton of options to choose from.
Very
I really
cool.
think you gotta have. I mean, okay, I just bought 2 bikes.
Casually
You
drop
sound like a bike
that.
rider. You sound like a bike
so
rider.
I just think you gotta have there's the downhill bike and then there's the cross country bike. That's I just think that's but I think that's true for anybody, right?
That's just,
Correct?
like I said, I was just saying. I mean, you sound like a biker. You know, it's
Yeah.
new bike day. You know,
Yeah.
if you're on
Expand the
Instagram
collection.
and you're in the space, someone's got a new bike day probably once a week.
Yeah.
At some point, they're showing
Yeah.
off the new ride. So
Yeah.
and it's for the same reason. You want a gravel bike versus your enduro bike versus your cross
Yeah.
country bike, whatever.
Yeah.
Your road bike if you're a
Yeah.
roadie. So
Yeah, and the road bike
Yep.
too. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a lot of
absolutely.
So a lot of bikes out there. All right, so let's talk about the bowhead. I don't know if Jordan can bring the picture up so that the three of us can see that one here.
I don't think I can get as in detail as Phil did just because he worked for Lasher. I don't work for Bowhead, but that one is called so there's 3 different models for Bowhead.
Okay.
This particular one is called the RX.
Okay.
There's another, and this is a crank style. It has full articulation in the front. And full suspension, I think so. Right?
Yeah,
Is that right? Okay.
Oh, I know the specs
You
on
know
all
the
these
competition,
guys.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
I
my
can
God, I'm
fill in.
nervous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bowhead, don't be mad. Okay. And the other one, the Reach, is just a throttle, so it's same as this, but doesn't have the crank feature. And then there's also, and this bike that we're kind of looking at is, what's different about this is it's a reverse trike. So Phil has the one wheel in the front, and
Right.
ours is, we have 2 wheels in the front and 1 in the back. Also, our motor is, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's in the back, not in the front. Like the main wheel is pulling from the back versus the front. So like,
Rear wheel drive, yeah.
yes, thank you. So like going up big steep hills and things like that. Whereas on the Lasher, you might skid a little bit. This guy just like straight right up that, like South Mountain, that thing can go up anything.
Wow.
And so the Reach is the other version, and that one, like I said, doesn't have any pedals, but it has just like handlebars, more of a downhill type situation, full suspension. That I don't know what else to say about articulation. But then the Rogue is got 1 wheel in the front, 2 wheels in the back. Again, more probably like a gravel bike, would you say? Like,
Yeah. The Rogue's kind of their
again, a
entry
crank
bike.
style.
Yeah,
They're
it's
like
crank
entry
style.
level. Yeah.
Yeah, but that one will grow with you. You could kind of change the wheels around. Yeah, I mean, as far as the specs there, it's a Bosch system instead of a Bafang on them, 500 watt instead of 1,000. It's torque based instead of cadence. So in terms of people like with the RX or people that want to crank, and I always say, I mean, that bike, if you want to do enduro or you just want maximum suffering, and a lot of people do, right?
Right.
Because you're cranking hard, right? It's
Yeah.
torque based. It puts out what
What
you're
you
what
put
you're
in.
putting in, right? You know, their founder Christian loves the RX. He swears by
He
it.
just
right? So-
literally was at the Seattle Classic, and he just like did so well in the gravel race that he got invited to go to Leadville
Wow.
in that.
yeah,
That's amazing.
So
we
that's
go like
exciting.
70 something miles or something.
Yeah, and it's like the
Yeah.
elevation. So
Yeah.
oh, it was pretty exciting to be there and see
That's
that.
cool.
But
Yeah. No, it's cool. I mean, and the Reach, that's going to be with throttle only, right? So
Okay.
so the articulation on the bikes is super cool, right? It really lets you kind of
You can
get
really-
in some dynamic trails.
you can
yeah.
really turn into some corners
Yeah.
and like really lean over. It's a lot. It's a lot like it. Like I also ski, so it's a lot like skiing. Like
Okay.
if you're in a bucket seat, like how we do it. You've skied, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So it's a really the same thing because the articulation, you're just kind of like moving side to side.
Yeah.
It's not really. I'll say. I mean, it's a workout, but it's a different kind of workout, I guess,
Sure.
so to speak. But I think the Rogue, their entry level, is really great for programming, introducing people to the sport. Same with the Lasher. That's my first bike. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the kind of the Lasher is a really good universally accessible bike to everyone, like whether they're starting out, intermediate, advanced, because a lot of people are coming from the road bikes, which are recumbents, right? So it's an easy transition in that sense. The Bowhead's great as well. It's a little more of an advanced bike because of the articulation. So there's a little learning curve because just when you pull the pin, if you're not holding it upright, you might just flop over, right? Because the bike articulates, right? So there's a little more of a learning curve. It does let you, when you get proficient on it, really tackle some dynamic trails at high speeds and things of that
Yep.
sort. So, they're all great in their own respect, right? So, But yeah, I mean, that's just two of the manufacturers, right? We haven't even covered everyone else,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
there's a ton of options.
Yeah, yeah, and I certainly didn't mean to, like, we're not going to spend. This isn't a podcast about
No,
other
no,
Yeah.
bikes.
no.
Yeah, I wanted to get a kind of a sense of the
What we
options
ride,
that are
yeah.
out there. Yeah,
Yeah.
the differences. Yeah, and to your point, you've got some crazy videos of you riding some very
fun.
technical and tight turns, and it's just amazing to watch that thing corner.
And I've only rode it, like I just got it. Well, I haven't even had it for a year. And so I'm still learning every time I'm getting in it.
Okay.
And it's just been so much fun to mess around. So, yeah, it's fun.
Very cool. Before we do leave the topic, though, because both of you
Yeah.
ride three-wheeled bikes, I know I saw a bunch when I was at Tour de White Mountains and met Truman for the first time as well. His team had a bunch that had the four wheels. Just as a quick kind of overview, what you guys know of like 3 versus 4. Are there any? I mean, what are the differences? I guess it seems like obviously a little bit more stable, but maybe more difficulty in some cornering. Is that a fair assessment, or that's just outsider looking in, kind of like at it.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of stability, in certain ways, it might be a little less stable too. I mean,
Okay.
it's stable in one sense, but with our bikes, we do a lot of leaning, or
Right.
if you have an articulating bike, the bike does leaning to stabilize you. On a four-wheeler, you can't offset too much. So you're kind of at the mercy of whatever level of articulation the suspension already offers you, because you're not really going to do much with the bike on your own. It's heavier. It's a little more like that. So, haven't quite figured out the motors on that to really get extreme speeds, right?
Yeah.
There's kind of like some of the Quadrex, the Tradzug, I think it's called. There's one other one right now, man. They're gonna kill me if I don't think of their name right now. Maybe I'll drop it a little bit later. But there's one other one from, I believe, Norway.
Okay.
Running a blank right now. When I think of it, I'll pull it up. But those are kind of the main ones. I can't think of them right now. And then you got the gravity bike, right, with no motors,
Right.
which is the four-wheel. It's the downhill. That one's been around the longest, of course, before what we're talking about.
Sure.
So there's just different trade-offs, right? But the balance is a little bit different because the bike does most of the balance for you. You can't really offset.
Gotcha.
So in certain ways, it could be more stable, but less depending on how cross-sloped you're riding
Okay.
and things of that sort. And then the speed's not quite what it is because you're finding a way to have 2 drive wheels instead of 1. Which is
Gotcha.
a little trickier actually to get that at speed, right? You either got to do that with hub motors or, independent mid mounts on that you can't quite ramp up to the same speed with the gearing that we have on some of these three-wheeled bikes. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's just a quick side question. What is it that you do for Lasher?
what's that?
What do you do for Lasher? What's your
So
position?
I handle.
You sound
this-
like sales. You
Yeah,
sound like
well, for sure. I mean, sales is a part of it for
I think
sure.
we just sold 3.
Yeah. I mean,
I do sales.
Okay.
Community and engagement, that's really where my heart is. That's the role, right? Going
Yep.
out, working with programs like 360, like High Country, working with promoters like yourself to set up events to get bikes out there. We put on a massive event in Bentonville last year with 42 adaptive riders, heading up to a CAF Challenge Athletes event here actually on Tuesday. There's going to be 60 adaptive riders, new riders that never rode before. I shouldn't say never rode before, but trying out adaptive mountain bikes maybe for the first time, most
Yeah.
of them, and really kind of engaging on the community side, having a presence there with Lasher, where because these bikes aren't cheap, right? So when you
Right.
buy the bike, you have a community behind it, kind of like Apple in the ecosystem, right? You get a bike, we're present at events, we support events, right? We do the mechanical on there. I'm working on setting up a riders club, which will have kind of everything AMTB as a one-stop shop, where you could have videos on how to ride the bike, how to get your skills up, maintenance right, what maintenance goes in with the bikes, videos for that, and then just overall what events are going on around the country, so where you can meet like other like-minded people, right? And so then I can answer questions for people, and it's because it's daunting, right? You're paying upwards $20K for a bike, right? It's like you want to know that like if you get the bike, you're getting kind of a total community with that, the support, the information, how do you transport it, all that type of stuff. So that's kind of my favorite role at Lasher and doing that. But of course, getting more butts and bikes, and that's what keeps the bills paid up.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, let's get into the sport then a little bit. We got the bikes down, I think. So getting into adaptive riding you said about 20 years. I would guess that maybe sorry, these bikes have been around 20 years. Is that what it was?
The one-off was 20 years. That was the no suspension, no motor first mountain bike, right? I mean, prone style.
Yeah.
Road bikes have been for longer
Of
than
course,
that, right?
yeah.
But,
I think when most people think of a wheelchair bike,
Yeah.
it's the road bike.
When did
It's
you get yours?
It's that.
In 2009, 2010.
okay.
So yeah.
15 years
Yeah.
ago. So
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
so 15 years.
Yeah. You're right. Wait, what are
Well, so I thought you were going to say something. I was waiting.
No, sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, so 15 years ago, obviously you've seen the sport grown. When you did get into it, though, I mean, did you feel completely alone, or did you feel like you were entering
Oh.
something? You came from sports, from
Yeah.
other activities, correct? So did you feel like you were just getting into another sport, and you would run into adapted riders around the corner, or was it something that you knew you were kind of like
No.
paving the way? Is paving the way good?
I don't think I was paving the way, but I just never ran into other people
Okay.
like me.
Yeah.
Most people like were on the trail, and the thing went so slow. Like I was like hiking pace, right? So
Yep.
it became more of like a vehicle to get to go see something for me. And I lived in Flagstaff during that time, so it was super magical just to be able to get out on the trail and to go see stuff.
Yep.
And do it with friends or family or whatever. So, but I think thinking about it and the way it's set up, a lot of it was built so that you could climb really, really steep things. And so, now that we have motors and things like that, it's just not as, it doesn't need to be like that as much anymore. And, but yeah, it's been around for a while. And then I can tell you that when I bought that bike, I remember kind of seeing like the e-bike thing coming out like
Sure.
a year or two later, like first seeing it. And then I was like, but it was like way beyond my reach of like financial. Like I was like,
Sure.
I can't get that. Like there's no way. So I remember living in Flagstaff before we moved down here in 2019, like seeing the Bowhead Reach is what the first bike they really came out with.
Okay.
And like watching it on Instagram, and like my partner, Greg, he just was like, Kaitlyn, you need to get this. And I was like, but how much is it? And he's like, oh, it's like, $30,000. I don't know. I'm being dramatic, but
Sure.
it was, at that time it was
20.
really probably 20, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's same what it is, but it was really expensive.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's just no way that's ever going to happen. And then now, like, if you would have told me in that time, like, flash forward now where we are 5 years from now, that I would be on a bike like that,
Yeah.
I wouldn't believe you. Like, yeah, I think I said it earlier. So
Yeah.
I would have never thought I'd be on an e-bike.
And you both started more as the access, right? You're getting into just being able to get out to where you wanted in the Mogollon Rim, Flagstaff, and the areas.
Yeah.
Racing was not the first thing on your mind when you looked into these bikes.
No.
When did that
Just
switch
being out
for you, Kaitlyn? I'll let you go first.
I guess, when we started to do the tour of the White Mountains, when we first when Truman, High Country, and like that first race, I was like, okay, I had the lasher at the time, and I still in my brain thought it was cheating a little bit. Like I still don't, I'm really excited. Like I really want to get an RX kind of, because I really like the idea that I have to do a little bit more work that, I would like to get into like gravel races and stuff like that. That kind of excites me with my background, I think.
Yeah.
So, I just think we're in a different place than we were when I started, and it's really, really cool to see how much it's grown. And I really think in 5 years, maybe 10, I think no one's gonna be on an adaptive bike. I think we're gonna all be on like upright two-wheel bikes. I really do.
Some sort of, yeah.
I really, really, truly do. I mean, we're putting like people with disabilities, like people even as high as level as quad on a bike here, Phil. But we're putting people on like moto-bikes, and they're like able to, so I really don't think we're far off. And I think we're going to get to places that we can't get to now. That's going to be even better.
Yeah.
I've never even thought of it that way, but that's a vision right there to ponder for sure.
I really do.
Yeah.
I really
cool.
think we're not far from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, a gimbal or something. I mean,
exactly. It'd be some sort of a gimbal setup,
Yeah.
where you could still be balanced. I mean, you got to figure out the two-wheel part, but yeah. I mean, yeah.
Phil, for you, like when did racing, or I know you're not as prolific a racer as Kaitlyn over here, but you get into it obviously. When did the racing when did it turn the corner for the?
Oh yeah, no, I mean I've been in a bunch of races, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely a thing. My first one was really when I was kind of on my little, tour of Stoke that I was talking
Yeah.
about earlier,
Yep.
one of the stops on the way was the World Championships at Crested Butte
Okay.
in Colorado, which is just gorgeous if you've never been there, ridden there. And they really, in terms of racing, they've been doing it the longest on the adaptive side. They have the best kind of setup. Like the way that was set up was kind of like a time trial. So we had
Okay.
7 different courses. They were all timed, and then whoever had the best time doing it. These were like 2, 3, 5 minute runs that you would do.
Yeah.
Then we'd add up our times together, and then whoever had the best time, that's how you place, right? So,
Okay.
and then we had different classes there, right? So we had the e-assist class with actual cranks. I don't know if we had the reaches at that event, right?
I
So
don't think they're
typically
allowed.
they're their own class, right? Usually when you're like in like big races and stuff like that, the bowhead reach will have its own class because that's all electric.
Right.
The hand cycle e-assist class will be the other class. The non-e-assist class will be one. They'll have a women's class as well, and
Sure.
same thing with e-assist and non-e-assist. I think that's how it was set up, right? So we had several, like about 5 different classes. I don't know if we had the bowhead class there. I didn't see any bowheads
I
there.
don't think bowhead are allowed at Crested Butte because of the reach isn't.
The reach, yeah. I mean, there's some debate on the reach because I mean, is it a mountain bike? Is it a dirt bike? Right? Because it's all throttle. It's got a big fat tire like on
Yeah.
the back, right?
Yep.
You're talking like what is it, 5-6 inch tire on the back.
But
So
now they're putting, like, I'm thinking about putting I don't know, because I don't know sizes. I don't know anything about like mountain biking, like numbers and all this stuff right off the top of my head. But they're all putting like whatever that big tire was on that lasher size, 20.
sure, they're going lower on that too,
Yeah.
right? So the bowhead's always iterating and stuff like that. So it's moving around. But
Yeah.
anyways, that was my first kind of exposure to it, and I had a couple legends in the game. So the
Yeah.
fact that I placed in the top 3 was like massive. So like I was like, wow, like Pat Doherty was there, Devin Riley. These are some like OGs in the game, right? Pat's the inventor of the freewheel, and he built his own bike, right? He took one of the current bikes that was out there, one of the reactive nukes, and machined it up, slotted it up, Frankensteined it, and it's actually a pretty epic bike. So he was on that. Devin was there. A lot of these people that I met through my travels, right? So it was just really cool. Fell in love with it. I was able to be competitive, right? Placing and riding hard like that with some of the best riders out there. I was like, all right, like even as a quad, right, I could compete, and the technology could kind of level the playing field, right? I still have
Yep.
certain limitations. I don't have as good as core. My upper body, I can't, don't have full function there to crank as hard, certain things like that. But the fact that I was able to place, I was like, all right, this is cool. Like I want to do this more. And then we came back, and I think before that, I had competed in the Whiskey 50. First adaptive rider to actually complete that trail. That's how we actually got started in 22. That's how we met Todd, Truman, and I. That's when Truman and I started the adaptive mountain bike program there in 22.
Okay.
And that was kind of one of the first things we did. And that course was insane.
Sure.
Definitely not raceable. There were certain sections where you're on a downhill where Truman had to be behind me and hold my rear end down so I didn't topple down 100 yards down
Oh,
the
goodness.
hill, right?
Yeah.
So, but that we did that, and then we worked with Todd, and then Todd's like, hey, let's do the tour of the White Mountains. And then this is going to be our 3rd year doing it, right? The first year, there was, we had to put cattle guards in, right? There was the cattle guards out there that we couldn't get over, so we had to get picked up on. You remember that, right? So, and then the second year, Todd had rollover gates over all of them, right?
Right.
So we could actually
That's
race,
awesome.
and that was sweet. And then this year, now that we've got that, we've got an adaptive class that we've added on there. We've got podiums, right? Full on competition.
Yep.
We may, we're going to be scouting a trail here
Next week.
right?
Okay.
To see if we could even do the 35, which unlike the 9 that we do twice at like 18 miles, 35, we might even need extra batteries there. It's a crazier trail. There's drops. We got to see if we could do it, but
Yep.
it's progressing.
Yeah.
And what I loved about it is the community element, right? We're bringing all our people together. We're all riding. It's inclusive. It's competitive. It's integrated in the mountain bike community. It's not like we're separate, right?
Right.
We're integrated. We're talking. We're hanging out, and we're building community, right? And so it was the fun of the competition. It was the ability to do it right
Yep.
despite the disability level, and then building the community around that really got my stoke on it, right? And so, and then also competed in one of the races in Bentonville as well, Bike
Nice.
Fest last year, and so I've been in several. Right,
Yeah.
it's been a lot of fun, and want to keep on doing it, and looking forward to doing it with um, Aravaipa, right? Aravaipa,
Aravaipa. You got it. It's
Aravaipa.
all right.
Got it. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. So I was going to wait till that at the end, but we can kind of drop it at least now. We are looking at Big Woody, which is our race up in Flagstaff held in June. It'll be next month, about a month from now. We're adding an adaptive class for that race. And kind of like what you were just talking about with the 35 at Tor. Toying with just a slight change to the other course, because there'll be the cross country will still continue on its normal course, but there are some unrideable sections. Really, the Highland Trails kind of where I'm thinking the biggest difficulty would be, where we can make it more rideable for an adaptive class. And so making a couple of changes there, not taking away any of the stoke that we don't have to, but making it something that it can be more inclusive and get some more folks out there and ride. So it's going to be kind of a test this year. We're still going to award you and all that stuff. It's not just like a come out and ride test. We want you to come out and have fun, and I want you guys head to head, and I want everyone head to head and going for the win. But it's going to be a test, sort of like that first year at Tor, I guess you're talking about, where we're going to kind of see how it goes, and then we'll get better every year, hopefully, because I think once we just get more people out and doing it and feedback back to me that I can then take back to the course and actually change or whatnot, we get it better and better, so that it's just like any other race. And just like any other race, it takes that time anyway. We start regular 2-wheel races, and sometimes it's like, guys, we got to cut this part out. This is not on a race type day, this is not a good section to have as a race. You want to go ride it, very cool, but it's not good for racing. So yeah, it's the same kind of thing, where you make changes and you make it better, and you want to make it fun, and you want to keep it competitive, and you want to keep it exciting for everyone who comes out. So we'll be doing that. We'll be starting at Big Woody, and I want to look at some other races with you guys too, because I think we have a lot just back in my mind, the trails that we use. I think there's a lot that we could really kind of turn that adaptive category on today and really make it something that people would want to come out in there. And I know there's plenty of folks here that you guys work with day in and day out. So stuff that we'll continue to work with here behind the scenes, not in front of the camera here, to get these things going. Because I'm excited too. I think it's a really cool thing.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited for the other ones as well. Like you mentioned, doing some, Arizona has already become such a hub for AMTB in general, adaptive mountain biking.
Yep.
And having more races, ultimately getting it dialed in to the point where we could introduce and bring in riders from other states, maybe even international, and really years down the line kind of have Arizona be a big hub for adaptive racing and several races throughout the year. Because we've already been really blowing up the sport out here, traveling all around the country. I think both between 360 and high country, we got 14 adaptive mountain bikes, something like that.
Oh yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Somewhere at 15 maybe.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And
Bikes.
that doesn't include any of the off-road wheelchairs and stuff.
Just program bikes.
Bikes
yeah.
themselves, like the physical bikes themselves that are
Yeah.
available to ride.
Yeah,
for people
so-
to be able to try and stuff like that. And we're always trying to, buy different ones so that people can come to Ability or come to High Country and be able to try a little bit of everything. There's another bike that we haven't really touched on. There's like a recumbent style where maybe somebody that still has the use of their legs and but maybe they can't, maybe their arms are weaker, or maybe they had a stroke or something like that. But there's like a reactive adaptations makes this one as well, and you can pedal. You can go, Truman has the Stinger. It's called the
Yeah, it's
Stinger.
called the Stinger, yeah.
And a lot of people love it. It just gets them back on a trail and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted to throw that one out
Yeah,
there.
no, that's a great point. There's so many styles, right? And even our upright riders, right, with invisible disabilities, right, having some of that pedal assisted upright bike. There's a lot of different options, right? So really could cater to everybody, and we've done such a great job. I was just talking to a participant that's coming here from Vegas to Arizona, got a hotel and everything to be a part of the next ride and row next week, right? So we've really. I get DMs all the time and stuff about, hey, I've heard about you guys. We want to come out here and try the bikes because, great thing is you get this combination of programs and funding. You could start to get all the bikes represented, right? And people could really try to see what's best for them.
Yep.
And there's nothing better than doing that, because at the end of the day, you're spending a lot of money on a bike. So, you want to make sure it works for you. This isn't something you could just return to the store. They're hand built, right?
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, it's not like they're on the shelf, right? You go to Trek, I didn't like it, whatever.
Yeah.
So and your disability level dictates a lot of stuff. So you might not know, right? So
Gotcha.
some situations it is what it is. Like you might not always be able to try the bike with like a quad setup, because there's some specific things you could do. But overall, and we're doing better at that as well.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be getting you guys a quad setup, so set up one of the lashers to have like everything set up for like wrist throttles and wrist brakes, right?
Yep.
Sip and puff controls, right? Like you could have all like elbow shifting. So there's a lot of different modifications you do to really accommodate all disability levels. But we've done such a great job out here that people not only, we had I think it was like almost a 14-person ride in February or something like that. And that's just your regularly scheduled programming here in Arizona, right? Like
it's just growing so much. And it's really just cool to see that like people within our community, they're getting the opportunity, like they can now buy their own bike too. So like it's just growing. And I feel like what I feel super grateful for is actually here in Arizona, I think we have more females riding adaptive bikes than we do.
Oh, finally.
Really
Flow
anywhere.
retreat. Talk about that. Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do because so Ability 360, we partnered up with Kootenai Adaptive and High Country Adaptive, and we put on this women's retreat. And so we had ladies from all over Canada, all over different states here in the United States come here. We did a lot of skills training and stuff the first day at Papago Park, and then like got to do some really big group rides. But I think the best part of it was like I found this Airbnb and we had this house, and so really like being able to bond with other ladies, whether they're new to their injury or they've had it for a long time. It was just really cool to be able to talk and bond and learn from each other and grow. And every single one of those ladies, we all got better every single day. And at the end of the camp of the retreat, I feel like we were completely different riders and just a whole new different level of confidence. And I really enjoyed doing that. And I know there's some talks that I'm working with some other people again and want to do another ladies retreat. So honestly, I think that's what really, I think I had just gotten my lasher when we had put that on. And it's really honestly kind of what like helped me really fall in love with it. And
That's such a great point too, because the inclusivity of both male and female is really what's going to blow the sport up. It can't just be all guys, right? Like that's, if you want to take it to the next level, if you want to have enough demand on the bikes to lower the cost and stuff like that, it's got to be across the board. And it's been huge, right? Like Kaitlyn said, Flow Retreat at the time, I think we had 14 ladies. It was the biggest like all women's adaptive mountain bike retreat at the time. And then Bentonville, we had almost, I think like close to 20 out of the 42 riders, right? Wow. Almost 50-50, right? Yep. So I'll have to see with this next event with the 60 riders, that's going to be one of the biggest ever as well, right? So that inclusivity is massive to keep pushing the sport together, building the community. And
right.
And I think we have to do a little bit of both. Like, I think we have to have like, our adaptive mountain biking, like events and races and stuff like that. But then what I think is really cool is being part of this race series and like seeing how this is growing in Arizona and how it's also growing all over the country, and how, each state does it a little bit differently, or we're still like literally pioneering something that nobody's ever done before. So we're all learning and we're all growing. And I think that that's what just makes it so cool, is we're kind of at the forefront of, like, I can just imagine maybe we'll be on a podcast like this again in 10 years and we'll be talking about, something completely different. Or like I said, we'll be on two-wheeled bikes. I don't know. But it's just really cool. And I think that's why I love it as well. Like with tennis, it gave me that, like, okay, I can play this sport with anybody. Same thing with the adaptive mountain biking. Like I can go on a ride with Greg and we can go do Haws, and I can go do, just as amount of cool stuff that he gets to do. Maybe not all of it, but there's a lot of stuff out there I can do. And I think it's brought us together. And so I can't imagine like what it does for a lot of other folks. And I think there's one other thing, when we're out on the trail, I think a lot of times people, they don't know what to say, or I think, but the best thing is it's just been so super supportive. Like everybody's like, it's really, really awesome to see. Like they're, first of all, they're like, what is that? Or what kind of bike is that? How does that work and operate? And I love the questions. And I think we need to continue educating, and that's how we're spreading awareness. But then that just like educates other people, and we had, everybody's learning all the time about
Yeah.
how different people are getting out on bikes. And like a couple weeks ago, Greg and I, we were out on Hawes, and like we met this lady, Lauren, and she's like the marketing, like does all the Instagram and stuff for the Hawes Alliance page. And
I know
she's
Lauren.
like, wow, yeah.
She's fantastic.
Yeah, she's amazing. I mean, I
Yep.
just met her at that moment, but like, it was just super. And like,
Lord.
she's like, it's really cool to see your bike out here, and it does these trails, and like, just that inclusivity is just, I think, if anything, and always wanted to do whatever anybody else can do. And I think that's the biggest thing, is someone with a disability, is we never want anything to like really stop us from being who we are and doing what we want. And also too, there's this thing called inspiration porn, and I'm just going to bring it up because it kind of it's a hot topic for us folks with disability. But like,
Okay.
Maybe I go to the grocery store and someone makes a comment to me like, oh, it's really great to see you're out grocery shopping. Like, cool, I got to get groceries too. It doesn't make me I'm just human, right? And so I think there's a difference between that kind of inspiration and like, hey, you're on a mountain bike inspiration. This is rad. And so I really don't know what my point was, but I just wanted to bring up the fact that when we're outside and we're doing what we're doing, it definitely is like really cool to feel part of a really important community, like another community, and welcomed out there. Because I think a lot of times maybe we don't feel welcomed like in certain social settings, and as far as maybe not welcome is the word, but you just feel different. You definitely feel different. And even as someone with I've been hurt for 30 years, I'll still have instances where I might feel different, and that's okay. And I think, being able to celebrate that, and look, we're all people and we're all different, and that's really cool.
Yep.
Well, you hear the passion there, right? I mean,
For sure.
that's what this does for us, right? It's a catalyst for the stoke and the experiences that you expand, like Kaitlyn was saying, the people on the trail that you meet. That's how it works, right? You meet
Right.
these people, you have these connections because it's a catalyst for conversation, and it's incredible, right? I mean, what it does, and that's really what enlivens you. A lot of people with disabilities, some people are scared to leave the house. They're scared to go into social settings. The wonderful thing about the bike is, and you could talk to this as well because you played a lot of team sports as well, Kaitlyn, but when you're kind of first injured or trying to work your way into figuring out what's up from down, sometimes being thrust into like a 12-person basketball team might be too much for some people.
It's definitely intimidating for
Yeah.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
And with the bike, you could start out solo or maybe with a support rider or your friend, right? And then
Yep.
you meet someone on the trail and they're like, hey, cool bike. And now you start talking, and then now you're riding with a friend. And then all of a sudden you link up with 360 or high country, and now you're group riding, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you're racing, right? Because you're more comfortable. So you could ease into it.
Yeah.
I think you can't really understate the importance of kind of that transition, right? So as the mental health device portion of it, it helps with social integration. It helps finding your passion, drive for life. Exercise, right, transforms your body. You have more energy. You're more
Yeah.
willing to want to travel and adventure and stuff because, you're not just a lump on a couch anymore, right? So
Yep.
all these things is where it leads to the passion that, you heard from Kaitlyn, you heard from me today. Like it's a life changer, right? And it's like the way I always address cost, man, is in my mind, if there's a will, there's a way, right? What would you pay for a cure right now, right? I mean, if we could just be running and playing basketball, to be fair, we've been injured for a long time.
I know.
We're
I
not
don't think
sitting
that's
there
fair.
waiting for one, but at
No.
the same time, a lot of people out there, especially freshly injured
Yeah.
people, they're like, that's what they're doing. That's their whole life is researching and like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I need to find a cure in this treatment and
And they
everything.
spend so much time and so much money with, maybe probably not getting anything back, or, they like, okay, the next 5 years I'm going to dedicate to walking again. And
I did it.
I did too.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think I spent 3, and I was like, I'm too slow. I can't keep up with my friends. I'm
Yeah.
going in a chair. So it's definitely, no, if there's a cure today, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're veterans. I'm 23. She's 30 years old in our new bodies, right? But a lot of new people out there, that's something they live for. They push
I get
for,
it.
right? And
Yeah.
the point is like, it's like, if you had the ability to restore a lot of things that you feel you've lost, right? that's priceless, right? And,
Right.
and in terms of what the bike allows, in terms of access, connection, reignition of passion,
Yeah.
mental health, exercise, adventure. I mean, the list goes on, right? I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it, you know.
Very cool. Man, you guys have said so much that I want to like go back and, ask questions and go down these little routes and stuff.
Sure.
A couple of hopefully we'll try and keep them quick because I do. There's so much to. I think
I know,
there's so
this-
much to keep unpacking.
lot.
We might have to do this as like a 3-part series, but
There's a lot.
so you were just talking about cost. So that was one that I mentioned. You said, one of these bikes, could be upwards of like 20 grand or something. You also mentioned that between the two, between Ability 360 and High Country, you have about 15 or so bikes that people can use. Presumably when you take them out on rides, it's kind of a group ride. It's either an introduction or maybe in a standing ride that you have. Are they available as well, like for a race, for a Tour to White Mountains that somebody could say rent from you for that weekend, for that event only? In that sort of sense, and that way they don't have to, not everyone can drop 20 grand at a time right away for a regular bike. But if they had that option to like, not even a rent to own, I almost said rent to own, but like they could rent it from you for the weekend and that kind of thing. Is that available for them, or
I do. I mean, it's a little hot because
is it okay?
I think our organization and High Country like Ability 3, we just have they're $20,000 bikes,
Sure.
and we use them for programming like that. We're very entry level. Maybe I think High Country, can do a little bit more. We just see a lot of people, and we get a lot of people in bikes. So like, it's tough to say like we just don't want people racing bikes because that's like over 100 grand.
Asking for,
it's a lot of money, and
hear
then there's a lot of liability involved as well. So we aren't at that. Ability 360 just right now is not at that point. But what we help people do is we do know that like High Country Adaptive will lend out their bikes or let them
They do.
use.
Okay.
They'll let them use them for the race and stuff like that. But the other thing is we can direct them and help people at least try all the bikes first, and then help them buy a bike by either some kind of grant or helping them set up like some kind of GoFundMe, or talk about just different ways that they can fundraise for themselves and get a bike. But
Okay.
usually when a community chips in, people can raise. I mean, we've had a lot of like our friend Linda and somebody else just recently just got a bike from a GoFundMe. So like it's when people hear about it, they want to support that person usually. And so
Yeah.
I think, if everybody put in like literally, if you knew, I can't remember, I did the math one day for my birthday, I put a Facebook fundraiser up and I just was like, we really just want another bike. I really just want the program to get another bike.
Okay.
And I was like, if all my friends, I had like 5,000 friends on Facebook, and I was like, if everybody just donated $5, we could get a bike.
Yep.
That's how I look at it. But so to answer the question, no, unfortunately, we're not at that point. I don't know a lot of other organizations. I've reached out to other organizations because I wanted to know, like, are there people doing this? And other organizations really don't. So High Country Adaptive is really lucky, and I'm happy that they're able to do that because
Yeah, no, it's like Kaitlyn said, right? Like the bikes are expensive, the maintenance is
Yep.
expensive, all that. So that it's definitely a consideration. Fortunately, High Country does allow certain races, right? If you're getting into some crazy stuff where it's super technical or potential to bash the bike,
Sure.
maybe not so much. But some of the races we've done, High Country will lend out bikes, so you do have that. But whether it's High Country 360 or whatever, the goal is to grow the community, and the only way you really do that is you come try the bikes, you fall in love, you not only love the bike, but you see the community around it, right? That's being built around that, and it's something that you're like, hey, I'm in, right? I'm gonna do what I need to do to make this happen, and ideally you get your own bike, right? Because then
Sure.
if you race it, you break it or whatever.
because it is
Yeah.
also so customized. Like the bike
Yeah.
itself is very
You
custom.
did say that. Yes.
I have specific controls
yeah.
for me, like quad controls. I can't just get on a High Country bike and shred the way I can on my
No.
bike. It's set up with Bluetooth shifting, and everything's on the left side and certain brakes. And so, again, that's what disability levels
Yeah.
dictate a
Yeah.
lot, right? So you want your own bike for racing. High Country does allow for it, but ultimately we want, more butts on
Yeah.
bikes that way. Now, to speak a little more towards funding on that, for people with spinal cord injuries, Kelly Brush Foundation and Challenge Athletes Foundations are the two big ones to provide funding. You could usually get about, depending on the grant cycle, about $5K from Kelly Brush, about $3,500
I
from.
would say also High Fives is probably another.
I was
really
gonna
big
say
one.
High Five's the other one. The only thing with High Fives is it's sport related. If you've been in like an inertia based accident or a sport accident, for that, right? So not quite everyone could qualify. So I usually mention that one kind of third. Those are kind of the big ones. Those two for sure. Challenged athletes, amputees, and other people could apply for that too. Cali Brush is just spinal cord related.
Okay.
High fives is, I believe, spinal cord only as well, but you got to be, or
Well, it's
do they?
you have well basically no. High fives is you can apply for their grant if you like got hurt in some kind of like you were a skier, snowboarder, like some kind of action sport.
Yeah, but is
Okay.
there limitate? Is it just for people with spinal cord injuries?
No.
Or like people like amputees could apply
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, cool. So
I'm pretty
those,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I'll take Kaitlyn's word on that. But and then other than that, like Kaitlyn was saying, and there's always other like local grant programs. So I
Sure.
always suggest like do your homework. Local organizations, local programs have stuff. I know Triumph Foundation down in California helps with equipment stuff like that too.
Yep.
So there's always something. If you're proactive and you're serious about it, you're gonna find a way. And then the rest of it's either financing, right? If you have good credit or income, right? We offer with Lasher, for example, 0% financing for a year if you have decent credit, right?
Yeah.
Our partnership with Bike On, they do 6%, right? For multiple years, right? So there's ways to do it. GoFundMe's, like Kaitlyn was saying, is huge, right? Tap into your community. Our friend Linda, she knew someone that, had a comedian in the family. They did like this whole creative event with a raffle and like giveaways, and she raised more than the cost of the bike, right? So
Wow.
on top of her grant with Cali Brush and Challenge Athletes, right? She paid nothing out of pocket, right? So it takes some time,
Yep.
but if there's a will, there's a way, right? Just the whole like, oh, it's too expensive, like scrap it. Like, how bad do you want anything in life that's worth anything,
Yeah. Oh, I love it. You're apologizing for not being able to rent, but you've got so many options that you guys both just dropped that there's no reason. It seems like there's no reason why if you want to get into it, you can definitely you can figure it out. That's great. So let's talk about getting out there and racing, and I think just maybe the misconceptions of the bikes, right? And we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. There's your two-wheeled electric that is very popular now. People love them, just don't want to pedal up the hills anymore, so they have this. Yours are not like that, essentially. Maybe in the basic of physics or electrical engineering, right? They are an e-bike in the same kind of class, but they are certainly different in that they are more of a medical device for assisted, right? To get you out there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Would you say so, Phil? What do you think?
As far as like a medical, I mean,
Maybe medical wasn't the right.
well, when you're
the right
when you're flying on
terminology,
airlines, you better call it medical
Yeah.
equipment. Then it flies for free. If you call it a bike, then you're getting charged money. So yeah,
There we go.
in different
All right.
contexts, we call it different things. The gauntlet of different things, and this will get. I want to touch on trail advocacy a little bit
Yeah,
because I think
that's what I wanted. That's where I
important,
wanted to kind of lead this all into.
too. Yeah. So it's an adaptive mountain bike for what it actually is, right?
Yeah.
Or AMTB for short. You'll hear that a lot in the community. But it's also a mobility device. That those two can be true at the same time, right? Because we don't, when we're out and about, like at a Renaissance fair, and we just want better access instead of suffering through pushing our chairs there.
Yeah.
It's also a mobility device, right? Or an all-terrain wheelchair, right?
Yep.
Or yes, it is medical equipment because when I fly, and I'm going to be actually traveling overseas here this in a couple months, right? And so I was actually on the airlines all day yesterday and today trying to figure out the qualifications, what's what, because you could either roll them up there, which are subject to damage, right? Because we all know how airlines are super careful with their wheelchairs, right? So seeing all kinds of horror stories, or you could box them up and then you got to work, there's different ways around it. But yes, it is a mobility device, and that ties into how it's actually qualified in the trails, right? Because Brown's Ranch has no e-motors allowed, right? But our bikes are allowed up there because it is a mobility device. It falls into equal access for the trails, right?
Yep.
So at the end of the day, that's really what it is, right? So depending on the context, you might call it slightly different things, but on that trail perspective there, that's how we've been viewed, right? And what Kaitlyn, we were talking kind of off script earlier today about how Kaitlyn was mentioning like everyone's super excited to work, like trail builders or advocacy groups or the city or the forestry departments, BLM. Like I've worked with a lot of trail builders and authorities on the trail side. I know Kaitlyn has as well. We've done. And that's kind of one of the wonderful things about the bike. It's kind of a built-in advocacy because you have your own needs to ride more places. So even if you're not into being an advocate, you just want to ride more trails, you're going to kind of fall into it, right? And then now you're working with people and trying to understand, well, what's the widths like, right? What about the cross slope, right? What about the slope or squeeze points, and trying to make trails. I wouldn't, I mean, yes, adaptive, but the word itself, a lot of times from like the, like the get off my trail, bro. Like, it's not, we're not taking over the trails, right? And adaptive isn't supposed to be like this boring, flat, featureless trail. None of us
Right.
want that, right? Obviously, people got to start somewhere, right? And we
Sure.
understand beginners
Yep.
and all that, but it's really under the topic of universal trail design, right?
Okay.
Where you're taking into consideration not only people with disability needs or different physical challenges, but the elderly, the young, and people of all skills levels, right? So it's universal design. When you're coming into a trail, if you got to put a ride around, maybe you put a feature on it too. So sometimes the upright riders might want to hit that too because there's enough stoke, right?
Right.
Or a bridge is widened out by 2 inches, right? We're not talking about rebuilding trails, right? So and the feedback and the willingness to work with adaptive riders has been massive across the board. I've traveled all around the country, worked with IMBA, worked with local builders, ridden on trails and scoped and assessed, right? Everyone is game, right? And that's been kind of the most promising thing for really advancing the sport is you got to find somewhere to ride, right?
Yeah.
The biggest things are cost, transportation, where do you ride, and how do you ride it safely, right? Support riders, right? So
Okay.
those are kind of the four main things, which, by the way, adaptive programs like 360 and High Country, they fulfill all those things. So that's always kind of been the gateway for adaptive mountain biking. But
Excellent.
it's really encouraging to see.
Very cool. Are you seeing any kind of pushback with just the e-bike portion of it? Like someone just doesn't see the difference?
Um, I don't think I have, and I could be naive because I'm out there just smiling and like maybe somebody's like, "Oh my God, another e-bike," right? Or whatever. I don't know, but in my world, I haven't experienced anything quite like that. I do, I really, really, really try to be extra cautious. Like as I see riders coming up or whatever, just making sure that I'm really slowing down, just making sure that I get over on the side. Like I'm really, really just trying to be very respectful because I also just don't want us to get a bad rap or anything like that. So I really slow down. Like I even stop. Like I just want to be as respectful as possible.
Yeah.
But I haven't. I think one of the things, there's a program that I think that Browns Ranch and the Conservancy is trying to roll out that I kind of think is kind of interesting, and I think this could be a direction that we could go in. Is now there's a new kind of thing. If you go to their website, you can have to fill out an application, and they kind of might send you like a sticker of some sort to be able to put on your bike, just to kind of show, like maybe it's just a blue little sticker.
Gotcha.
Just so like if you're at Browns Ranch and you're cruising around and you're on an e-bike, like, hey, this person might have this person has a disability, so that.
For the other folks looking at it, they're
Yes,
gonna say,
all the stewards and stuff out there.
Yeah.
So, I think it's kind of smart. I think it's kind of cool. I think that could be a way that, I know, kind of going into like the U.S. Forest Service. I know that there's a ban on e-bikes and stuff like that. So, I think that could be a way that we can tread forward kind of lightly and
Sure.
change the perspective and change the way people look at bikes. And yeah, I wouldn't call it a medical device necessarily. It's hard, it's very blurred for me. It's a bike, but
Yeah.
you use it differently than I do. Also, your disability is a lot higher and different than mine. I think if I was absolutely, I would use it, like go to Mardi Gras. I would do that at the Renaissance Festival, totally. So I guess it just really depends. But I think more people are open to it.
Yeah.
I also think people just like, I think when people say e-bike, I think there's still confusion between like a Sur-Ron and like an actual pedal assist bike. So I think I'm even really trying to change the way that I like my language, and I'm really trying to say pedal assist and not e-bike, because I think that's also a misconception, right? And I'm not here to make a debate, and I don't want to start anything, but yeah, I think we're sort of heading in the right direction. And I also think, like, for example, there's a guy that was riding in our program, and I rented him a pedal assist bike. He had just had a hip replacement, and he just wanted to get out on his bike.
Yep.
And that's how he could do it. And so to me, like, if it's opening up somebody's opportunities to go do something that they love, and it's going to help with their rehab, and as a like a rec therapist, that's my job. I really support it. Like, I'm 100%. But there's a different place for a Sur-Ron. Absolutely not where we're riding. I don't think that should. Absolutely, that could be dangerous. But I think people don't know. I think people sometimes get confused.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go back and say, I know I said medical device, and I know you said mobility device. Now that you've said it, and 45 minutes later, the only M word that came out was medical. So I apologize, because that was I know you had said mobility, and it just in the heat of the moment, it just sort of like slipped out as the other, because I was trying to think of what
it is medical equipment when you're flying, though.
FAA, take note. Yeah, so that makes sense actually. Where
and it actually is
in
right?
some
That's not a
context
stretch.
for sure. You might want to label it as medical. You started to get on it, so I was going to flip the question on you. Do you ever get mistaken for on your bike? People think that you are fully abled and just riding this rad ass thing, and then not in a bad way, but just like they see it and they don't see it for it being the mobility device, a wheelchair, but see it as like, that is a new type, new configuration for bikes. That looks badass. Where do I get one?
Honestly, no, I
No?
haven't.
Okay.
Everybody that I've run to on the trail has been like, wow, that's really, I don't know, maybe you have, but I have not. Most people are just like, that's really cool. It's really awesome to see you out here. And then I always follow it up with, this is my off-road wheelchair. Like, this is how I get to go see things and get to places. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what you said, I have a vision, and this would require a full paradigm shift. But why can't someone that doesn't have a disability get on one of our bikes, right? Like someone that's like, I mean, my dad's a perfect example. Now he's like 67, but he's in great shape, so it's not like he needs it. But when I first got the bike, and I went out to Ohio, where I'm from originally, and was visiting my pops, and he was like, man, I would just ride that bike over and up. He just prefers it.
Sure.
So really, if someone just wants to get their arm exercise and crank versus pedal, maybe if you're more elderly, and you've had hip injuries, or you can't risk a fall on a two-wheeled bike where you're this high instead of, about 2 feet lower, right, where the consequences are less, why not? And I think it when I say a paradigm shift, I think it's just people just look and say, hey, that's, like we said earlier, medical equipment. I don't want to be seen on medical. I'm able-bodied, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a stigma around disability that needs to, because again, like, it's a spectrum, right? As we age, a lot of us acquire disabilities, right? There's an argument about age being a disability in and of itself, right? In terms of access to the experiences you had before. Someone could be fully able-bodied, but they're just older and can't risk falls anymore. Maybe they're osteoporotic, right?
Yeah.
So why not get on a bike like that? So I think my vision, especially working from the manufacturer standpoint, right, and selling bikes, is like, the thing that would bring the cost down super quick is opening up your market, right, to the elderly folks, or really ultimately anyone that wants to ride
every bike shop
a trike, right? So
window,
now, instead of $20K for a bike, now it's $10K,
Yep.
$8K, maybe less, right, in the next 10 years or so. So I think what you just brought up in terms of how people view the bikes or view you on the bikes, like, that's just, and we've done this before. We're in the midst of it right now with LGBTQ culture and Black Lives Matter and everything that's going on right now to raise awareness around different things and topics. We're in the process of recalibrating how we think about things that previously have been thought of, it's only could be like this way right now, right? So why isn't this just another thing on the spectrum that is subject to that sort of recalibration?
Cool. Well, if I can be the first to ask to ride one of these,
Yeah.
I want to come. I saw, I'll admit, so I saw a bunch of you guys, and I know you guys were out there, and I don't remember if I spoke to you. I spoke to a few of you at the end when they were doing the awards and stuff, right? And everybody was sitting there at the top of that amphitheater. And I know of course I wasn't asking because I didn't know anybody that I did talk to that day. It's kind of rude to say like, hey, I want to ride your bike, but
You should have.
but I totally saw it as like, that could be like the coolest thing ever to like just get in. So definitely want to like set something up, maybe at Ability since you're here, or maybe get up to Flagstaff or something, and just I think we could do something fun. But I would just love to just tear around the parking lot for just a second just to see what it
Absolutely.
is, because it does look like it would be a mad machine to just ride down.
It's another skill level. It's another technique,
Right.
just
Yeah.
like something
Yeah.
else you'd have to master,
I'll,
right? You
I'll
got
probably
three
fall right
line.
off of it,
Yeah.
just like
Oh, yeah.
learning to ride a
You'll
bike the
tip in the
first time
parking
you
lot.
fall over.
We got the
Yeah.
we got the National Park Service. Four
Yeah.
ladies came up. They were working on this. They're like advocacy, like trails. They're helping trying to make more just accessible trails in general. But anyways, I got four ladies from the Park Service in flashers cruising around Papago. We had like the best. They had the
Awesome.
best time. They were
That's
just
cool.
like, this is
Yeah.
amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Into the racing thing, another thing that you guys touched on a little bit earlier. Within the community of disabled people, there's different abilities. There's different levels of being disabled, and you talked about, you know, age being a potential kind of a new thing, right? All of a sudden, we're getting into the point of like you're fully abled, but getting a little bit older and like hips stop working, and maybe you've had a hip replacement when you were in your 60s, but now you're 75 and it's just 15 years on top of that, you know, that surgery and stuff. And so things happen where you just don't have the access that you did as a 30-year-old man or woman. In the community and in the racing specific, what's the talk about? And again, I know it's early. Like when we talked on the phone, we kind of talked like right now it kind of has to be all one class, right? There's just not enough people. You know, we're lucky if we get 10 or 20 people at a race. And you're talking about a big event in Bentonville being 60 people, which is awesome, commendable, but you know, small in the scheme of like, you know, the Epic 50 or even the White Tour, White Mountains had, you know, couple hundred people in all the classes combined and stuff. Where does it go? Where does the conversation go as enough people kind of get into it where we can say, now we can have a class of these folks here, and then we can have another class of these folks here, or different machines for different rides also. Where does it break down to where the machine versus the ability even breaks? Because you could have two people with the same disability but want to ride your bike and maybe want to ride a different bike. So then where does it, you know, I know it's kind of a long and convoluted question,
No,
right?
but
Getting in the
I mean,
weeds
there's
here.
a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And feel free to keep it as out of the weeds as possible. We can go deep. We can talk whatever. Like I said, you know,
Yeah.
we can make this a 3-part series if we have to come back.
I mean, you're running into the crux of the weeds right
Okay,
here. Right? This
okay,
is,
so
this is the Winnie Pooh honeypot, man. You get stuck in this one for sure. So
Yeah.
it's like you said, even within our own community, right, of visually, physically disabled people, there's not like a settled thing. The best that we got now, like Kootenai Adaptive has set out a lot of different standards for trail standards, race standards, things of that sort. They're from Canada,
Okay.
British Columbia, and there's been a lot of the kind of the bigger series. Like I know Bowhead is big in Sea Otter. You know, they have their races there. They have Crankworks, a lot of different races in Canada. So those are going to be like for the Bowhead Reach that we were speaking of earlier, like the throttle only. No crank, right? So that's a class in and of itself where it's just reaches, right? So but those are specific events that attract people from where they are, right? And you have to have enough people join to have these classes. So what we're doing, before I get to Arizona, and then so that's typically a class, right?
Sure.
Then within the hand crank bikes, right? Now the question is, okay, well, how big's your motor? Is it a 250 watt, a 500, a 750, 1,000?
Right.
Right. You know, is it rear wheel drive or front wheel drive, right? Depending on the course, right? Some bikes are, you know, if it's a more technical course, right, front wheel is going to be at a disadvantage or it might not be able to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and then the throttle, right? You know, well, how do we treat throttles? Well, usually we don't, like in the race when I was in Crested Butte, like we weren't allowed to use our throttles. It was only crank, right? So still pedal assist. No reaches in that class, right? But no throttle, no all electric, right? Only cranks. I don't think we had a motor cut off there, right? So someone with a 500 and 1,000 were in the same race, right? So that's kind of the best we've got right now because, again, the sport is in its infancy. You don't have like, and then we haven't even gotten into disability yet, right? About quads versus pairs versus amputees, right? All these different things. So it gets into the weeds real quick. And then do you race side by side or is it time trial, right? So there's a lot of different things to take into account.
Yep.
What we're doing here and what a lot of places are doing is you're starting out with what you got, right? And we don't want to tell someone because they're on one bike, right? Like we don't have a class for you so you can't race, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about community. So as we grow, and the whole idea is you got to start somewhere to build awareness, right?
Yeah.
You know, we want to have more people join, more people get their bikes, and then down the line we have classes. Now, when you get into something like that, you got to be careful not getting into what I like to call tokenism, which is like we're all kind of in one category, and like, you know, we should have other classes, but we don't, and so we're just like on here for like a fun ride or something like that, right? And
Yeah.
so it's not going to be perfect. You got to start somewhere to raise awareness, and I think the way you kind of address that to some degree is you have a podium, you have a first, second, or third. So there's an element of competition too. It's not perfect, right? Because
Right.
we're not quite there yet. But at the same time, well, what are you going to do? Tell people no, and now you only have 3 people on hand cycles or whatever. So I think you build awareness to start. You build the community. You get people excited, right? Because the quickest way to kill stoke is tell someone they can't do something like that, right?
Yeah.
So we start with that, and then I think it will grow to that, and the standards will come, and then eventually there might be a point system like in quad rugby, like he's 1.5 points, he's 2.5 points. If we have enough people and they're in different classes, they could take into account both your equipment and your disability levels. And then we have point classes, for example, whatever it is, right? There's a lot of discussion in the game. Bikes as we know it, with full motors, full suspension, e-assist, are maybe 6 to 7 years old, right, in terms of where we are. So we're still early innings.
Yeah.
But I think that's the way that I would approach it. Caitlin, what are your thoughts?
No, I really agree with you. I totally agree, because if we don't start somewhere, then we might as well quit before
Yeah,
we start, right?
sure.
So I think you're absolutely right. I think you just have to start where we're starting and kind of see what happens and where it grows and goes. And absolutely, right now I think the more people that we can get in bikes, growing our community, getting some stoke on a race and racing, I think that's definitely the way to do it.
That's how we got to where we are now. You know,
Yeah.
like, you know, we're almost on year 3 now with Tour the White, and you know, we keep growing every year, right? And I think that's kind of proven the point. So we'll get there.
Yeah. If you had it your way, how quickly? I mean, tomorrow's obviously we're not fixing it tomorrow. Just like 3 years out. I mean, of course, nothing's perfect. Like I don't even think regular racing and mountain bike racing right now is even perfect. There's people who do point systems, and you can break it up by ages. But where's the age cutoff? Do you do it every 10 years? Do you do it every 5? Is there allowances for a 15-year-old who's a super stud on a bike to race against the adults, or do we have to put him in with the kids class because he's 15? So we'll probably never answer the question. So, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Like, what's the outlook for like a good? We're in the infancy. You just said it. So, what's a good kind of middle ground where we have maybe some differences in the sense of like a little bit more leveling out of this group, this bike. That way it's a little bit fairer in the competition for the level of the bike, because some bikes are going to kick some butt on the trail no matter what. Where we can kind of look at it.
I think it also does too, really quick. Like, do you think, Phil, does it come down to distance as well? Like just for example, I know we can swap batteries and things like that out, but we're still just barely like kind of testing that. Like we're gonna go test something, next week that we don't even know if our bike can make, right?
The 35.
Yeah.
Right.
So like, I do think like that's a factor as well. I know we just something I was thinking about. We were saying all that, but I do think we're not far, because I see more people getting bikes than I've seen in the last.
Yeah.
Like I see people it's new bike day all the time, and adaptive bike day, new adaptive bike day all the time. I keep seeing it on Instagram. I keep seeing it, in our local community. I don't think we're far from. I maybe 5 years. I don't think we're that far off from like having those, those certain classes and this really growing and, and being able to diversify. I hope.
Yeah, Caitlin touched on 2 important points. Like, I mean, there's a lot of variables involved in this, right? Like the battery thing, like a lot of it relies at the end. I think the most important thing is getting more butts on bikes.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, to have different classes, to have point systems, to talk about anything we're talking about, you need more bikes in people's hands. So that's at the top of the list. And how quick can we grow that? Well, I mean, if you just look at bike sales across the board. I have obviously an inside look into that myself, and I see the sport exploding. Like the size of events out there, right? Bentonville started out with first year 9 people, then 17 people, then 42 people, right? And it's
That's awesome.
like we're doubling numbers every year, right? Whiteaho has been going around with 30 plus people for a decade. Like this event at CAF, I think is increased by 50%. Last year it was like 40 plus. Now it's 60 plus.
Okay.
So you're really growing. But at the end of the day, that's what it's about. More programs getting bikes so people could try the bikes, make sure they want them, and funding. That's the biggest thing. I've been speaking all around the country, trying to really kind of rally not only adaptive programs to push budget to bikes, because they are the gateway. They are the safest, best place that addresses all the problems. But also on the corporate sector, right? And getting donations, right? And from a tax write-off standpoint, from a corporation, that's a tax write-off. It's a marketing ability to put your name on a bike. It's a way to do cool team building events with inclusivity and diversity training to like get people to come on group rides with us and learn about what it's like to ride together, right?
Yep.
And bond with your own employees while you do a cool new event instead of just Top Golf every month, right? So there's a lot of unique, cool ways to do it. But at the end of the day, it's more butts on bikes. I think that's going to be the driving force. But there's a lot of things like Kaitlyn mentioned with the battery and other elements as well that go into trying to figure this out. Yeah.
I also think maybe I should take back what I said about 5 years, because I also think a lot of people, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I think a lot of people are just stoked to go for a bike ride. I don't know if they like want to race. Like a lot of people that I've met that got bikes are like, that I've even like talked about racing to them, are like, yeah, I really don't want to race. I just want to like be able to go shred. That's,
Access. Yeah.
It's more about that maybe. So it'll be really interesting to see like what's going to happen in the next 5 years, and like also as like technology's evolving and like different bikes are coming out. Like I said, I still think that like we could be on two wheels not too very long from now. We really, really do, and we could be, maybe we're in your race and we're on a two-wheel bike, but we're a pedal assist, and we have someone there to help us start and be there when we land, when we get to the finish line, to help us stay upright and not fall over. I don't know, but like I said, that would be interesting too. Like, where would I go in that class? Or maybe that's just an e-bike assisted class. I don't know, and I'm just making stuff up. But that's a really tough question, and
yeah, maybe it wasn't the fairest of questions.
No,
we're talking it, so let's. We said we were going to go down this different route.
No,
roads.
yeah, but I'm really curious, like, to see how the racing thing goes, because honestly, more conversations have been had with adaptive riders about racing than we've ever had before. Like, most awesome. People don't even talk about racing because they're like, well, I can't get into a race, or there's still a lot of people that they don't want them to sign up for their race. Like,
really? Okay.
Yeah, we still have a lot of work to do in the country, I think. I mean, I could be wrong, or maybe there's still a lot of people that there's some ignorance, or they just don't know their own ability too. I'm not really sure, but
I would imagine the first time. I mean, you just talked about somebody who's like almost just finding out that it's available, right? That the access is available, and there's somebody like an Ability 360 where they can test it out and actually go for a ride and get back on a bike. Maybe a bike for the first time since an accident, or the first time ever. They had no idea this was out there, right? So I'll bet the race part of it was so much further out there. It was not even not the realm of conceivable, like you were just saying. So for them, like if you said, have you ever thought about mountain bike racing, and they're like,
no, absolutely no. Yeah,
this is the first time I've seen a bike, and because I've been in my hole, I've been staying at home and thinking that I couldn't do anything, or and that kind of thing. So I'll bet, like for some folks who are just are taking the getting out there for that first time and seeing what's available for them. Yeah, the race wasn't even a possibility. They didn't even realize they could get out there, first of all. So just being overwhelmed by that aspect would be pretty
yeah, that's
amazing,
a big
right?
point. I mean, what Kaitlyn was saying, I mean, a lot of people just want to get out there, right? So naturally, as the sport grows, you're going to get more people wanting to race. But for a lot of people, it's just getting out with their families, getting access to places they didn't have access before. Another way to exercise, it's not boring where you're just on an inside cycle cranking around, right? You're outdoors getting fresh air. So, yeah, I mean, that's, in the end of the day, I think that's the driving force for people getting bikes.
The cool thing is, I might say this for Aravaipa. Fudge, wait, how do I say
Take
it?
two. Aravaipa.
Aravaipa. What I want to say is, like, that's why, like, you guys, you could be like, 20 years from now, I'll be like, remember when we were trying to figure out what to do with that adaptive class? And like, that's
Now
why,
we have to like send them away because they like
yeah,
it sells out. The class sells out or whatnot, right? I
yeah,
mean, I
that,
wouldn't say send them away. We'll never send them away. You know what I mean? Though when they, it's like, oh my gosh, we have a limit of 200. Now we have to like, expand the
but you as
expand the
like the
course,
race
expand the course.
director, like you are also like doing something that you've never done before, is new to you, and like you're learning about different disabilities and like what's really out there. And I think having the support from you guys, from Epic Rides, from all those different race entities, like that's how we're gonna, I think also that's just how we're gonna get spread awareness more about our sport in general. Like
Yeah.
you guys are helping us out too. I mean, it takes a village to make this happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We're going to throw a race.
yeah,
And that's how you know that it's going to happen. It's
yeah,
like, we are going to throw a race and everyone's welcome. Right. For sure.
yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. I'm excited to be a part of it. When I saw, the team out at Tour de White Mountains, I was just like, I'm like, why aren't we doing this? Why isn't everybody? And I mean, probably a little bit naively thought, why isn't everybody doing this? I came to learn when you and I talked with Truman, or the three of us talked on the phone several months back, and you were just giving me some of the basics of the bikes, what the bikes can do and whatnot. There's camber issues, there's steep hills, and obviously having a safety rider sometimes behind is key, just for those times when something goes wrong.
Over something.
Yeah, things happen. And so some of just those basic things that I kind of saw you guys out on the bikes, and I'm just like, they've got these bikes that can take them everywhere. Like, let's just get them going. And it turns out they can't always go everywhere. They'll go just about everywhere, but there's there might be a few places that it's like, oh goodness, this might be a little bit tough. But a two-wheeled bike is the same, right? There's some places you look at and you're like, I don't think I can make it down or up or around this piece too. So there's geographical limitations, I guess, right, that are thrown out there. No, I'm happy to be a part of it. I'd love to I want to continue this. Obviously, we'll continue the conversation. We'll continue these tests with the different courses. Big Woody's the only one we do in Flagstaff. Almost every other race that we have is right here in the Phoenix area, and I think there's quite a bit of trails, just like I said earlier, that are ready to go. I mean, I think if I just said, hey, go check out this thing for me just to be sure that we're good, you'd be coming back to me tomorrow and saying we're on, and boom, category open. So
Definitely
I would
Pemberton, I was about to
Pemberton
say
all the
that.
way,
like
yeah.
usury,
All day long, yeah.
Yeah,
like
usury,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sonoran Preserve, Pemberton. I mean, there's so many Browns. I mean, I don't know, Browns would let you race some stuff in the Mountain Preserve, but I mean, there's a ton, right? Usury, Hawes. I mean,
Hawes, man. Even
yeah.
like some of the lower areas of Hawes, you could maybe do something. There's a lot of
there's a lot.
places
There's
that
a
we
lot.
could.
I mean, I've probably been on, I don't know, at least 70 trails here in Arizona. Probably 50 of them in Phoenix. So a lot of stuff to ride, a lot of stuff to work with.
very cool.
Yeah.
What other hot points of the advocacy part should we address here? I don't want to leave anything unturned that we could. Maybe there are a few that we don't want to open up on air. That's just maybe isn't quite the right venue for, the right time for. But is there something that we should get out there to everyone who's watching and listening who might want to take part? Join the fight. Get out there and advocate as well.
I think
what do people need to know?
I think like honestly, like when you said that you want to come try our bike, I think like anybody interested that wants to try this adaptive bike or see what it's like, I think you should I welcome you to come check it out. Reach out to me at Ability 360 or Truman up in High Country. Maybe that'll be the word. I don't know. I hope people come. I hope people like want to come try it, because you don't know until you get in somebody else's shoes. And I think that's one way that you can be educated and educate yourself. Like, honestly, yeah, come check it out if you're at all curious or know somebody that hey, maybe this could change their life and they don't know it. Like,
Right.
come see us, come check them out, come like give it come ride the bikes. I that's what I really think. Doesn't matter if you have a disability or not.
She's 100% right. To piggyback off that, like when I've worked with trail builders or officials before, that, might needed a little bit of convincing of, like, for example, like at Brown's Ranch, right? That's a preserve, right? So they have
Right.
very strict guidelines on, you can't have like a vine or something coming into the trail and cut that off. That's a no-no, right? So there was a little bit of hesitancy, I should say,
Okay.
fully, you know, and we're talking trails that might otherwise just be totally fine, right? We're talking maybe there's a cactus that's just a little close, like, you know, like on the ground, right? We're not even talking about like, you know, removing trees or fully redoing trails, right? So, but like Kaitlyn said, if you just come ride with us or try the bike yourself and
Yeah.
kind of see from the perspective that we have, from that perspective of access to experiences,
Yep.
that's really the quickest way to change minds. I've done that before where we'd have different officials come out and ride the bikes, and they're
Yep.
like, the light bulb goes off, and they're like,
Yeah.
this is about
Yeah.
equal access. You know, this
Yeah.
is about that stoke, right? Why
Yeah.
would you want to limit people that want to be a part of a community?
Yeah.
And be contributors, right? And that changes lives, and the self advocacy portion of it, you can't understate that, right? There's a multiplicity effect that happens when you get on the bike, right? Where you get a bike, whether you like it or not. I never thought I'd be an advocate in my life ever, right? You know, but life is interesting like that, right? And when you get on a bike, you have certain needs and places to access things
Yeah.
and places to be able to go. And so that saves resources for a particular community, right? When you have like riders themselves going out and advocating for themselves and for the community, right? So
Yep.
so that's big. But really, I think from an advocacy standpoint, you know, universal design on trails, funding for more access on trails, and funding for more bikes, right? For more
Okay.
butts on bikes, whether it's from a program context, helping there be more funding available for individuals to have their own bikes. Money, right? Money at the end of the day,
Right.
money talks, right? So a lot of the times when I might be speaking at places, it's to speak to groups like that, right? You know, and to try to advocate for fundraising for trails, for more bikes,
Yep.
and that's how you build communities. I think Bentonville is a great example where you have the corporate sector working with the programs and whatnot out there to really make a community around mountain biking, right? The trails there are integrated, right? You even have like themed hubs and whatnot, or
Right.
themed pubs around mountain biking, and it's a
so
whole nother
cool.
world, right? And I
It's
think
like Disneyland.
it's like Disneyland, right? It's like the Six Flags of
Yeah.
MTB, right?
Yeah.
So I think like, and that brings like economic prosperity, right? People come from all over the place to ride together, to come visit.
Yep.
You know, I think there's been a person with a disability that has bought a house every year that the event has been going on, right? So we
Really?
literally, this is the third
in
year
the
in a
area,
row.
okay.
Had another guy, Daryl, move in there this year after this event, right?
Wow.
So like you're literally like putting back into commerce and, you know, recreation, you know, building back into the economy, right? So this thing goes deep, right? You just got to kind of think of it differently. But like Kaitlyn said, it starts with more people getting on a bike and seeing it from our perspective.
Yeah. That's awesome. I just read, not to discount anything you said, but touching on Bentonville, I read an article just this week about the Walton family, owners of Walmart. Right, they're the ones who did a lot of this because they did a lot of infrastructure in that area. That's where their headquarters is. They bought another 2,700 acres
Yep.
in Bella Vista. If that's the right,
Yes.
which is like
Buena
I guess right
Vista.
next door,
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
town down down
Yeah.
the street, whatever.
Yeah.
Dedicated purely for more bike trails. Which
Yes.
and again, I still have not been there, so you know, it's this is coming from someone who hasn't seen it yet, who needs to see it, but heard, you know, so many good things about what the existing infrastructure, the existing trail system is like, and like just to hear that, you know, that they're even going, you know, further deeper into another, you know, and it's just amazing. I think that's pretty
Really
cool.
cool.
It is.
Just
it
on
is.
its own, right? Just on its own merit, nothing.
Yeah,
to do with
and no
what we're-
one's talking, hey, let's do Bentonville across the country, right? That's a unique situation, right? They got a
Right.
$250 million into their trail system with the Walmart base being out there, right? And
Yep.
funding out there. The Walton boys are avid mountain bikers, right? So there's a passion around that, right?
Yeah.
Passion and billions equals the Six Flags of MTB, right? That's how it works. But I think the model is sound, right? Like there's fractals of that you could introduce all around the country, right?
sure.
Where putting money back into your community, into trails, giving more groups of people with disabilities access to trails ultimately gives back to commerce and recreation and the economy and the community and advocacy and all these things, right? There's a net benefit that comes from you put one, you get 10 out, right? There's a multiplicity effect, right? And that I think is what that model of working the corporate sector, working with adaptive programs, working with the disabled community to be able to give back and give more opportunities for people for access.
Very cool. Yeah, we have a lot of good trail groups here, and just in Phoenix and greater metropolitan area as well as Arizona itself that are doing just that, on whatever scale they can. Some of them are like almost like grassroots neighborhood. Some of them are your, Maricopa Trail and Park Foundation, quite a bit bigger. And it's great. We've had a chance to partner with many of them over the years. Sometimes short time, sometimes long time. The folks from West Valley Trail Alliance, they're a regular charity partner of our beer garden. We have a beer garden at every race. All the proceeds go to West Valley at these particular races. It goes to different partners at each race. So being able to just be able to contribute in a little bit here and there and be able to help out groups that are either dedicated towards this one little Bentonville type, luxury hub, or this one trail, or this one neighborhood, or the whole state, right? And just be able to see that and be able to be a part of it. Like I said, dedicate hours when we can, get people out there to do a trail build day or a trail maintenance day. Although, most of us who do it, we don't know what we're doing. They're just, we go by that expert who's there, who's like, all right, you take this and drag it this way. Don't drag it too much down because irrigation this way, they teach us the right way to do it. Or you end up doing kind of the menial, easier jobs, like just drag those rocks out of the way kind of thing. Let the guys who know the trail expert, make the cuts. It's great. And it's great seeing the work. It's great seeing being part of it. Great seeing things grow and get bigger. And, we aren't Bentonville here, but I think we've got a pretty nice little gem of MTB too. So
You do.
I think Arizona, I think it sits in this world of like, it's known for mountain biking. I mean, obviously Sedona is a draw for a lot of people.
Amazing, yeah.
Nation, international, that kind of thing. But I think at the same time, we have this little, almost like we're still hidden in a way. I live here, so I can't say that I, hear from outside. But I don't think that everybody on an MTB who's going, let's do a destination vacation, are thinking Arizona.
No, I don't think so.
Moab might be a little bit bigger, someplace, Sedona's it's probably up there in the top 10, but it's not top 3. So I still think we have this hidden gem kind of piece that we can exploit because we're here and can ride all the time. But of course and then we have these forums that we can like, hey, come over here, check out the trails here because we have some pretty darn good ones too.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, from an AMTB perspective, though, I mean, we're pretty much at the top, right, because of the programs and the support, right? So, like I said, there's going to be someone traveling from Vegas, for an event we're having next week, right?
Yep.
Just to participate, right? We're going to drive 4 hours each way, right? So that says a lot about what we've done here. And, we're ripe, from that AMTB perspective to really put on some cool events with the support we have.
Yeah, I look forward to the day when, and you have some, you're talking about some, but when let's say 1 out of every 3 races is an AMTV race. It's, there's enough people. We've got 200 people out there. And then you talk about, okay, you can have a clash, you can have a clash, you can have a clash, but let's get a group that's so big. We don't have any able-bodied riders because we can't fit them on the trail.
It'll be there.
It'll be there. I think so too.
There.
I think with people like you out there, I think it'll be there.
It'll be there.
That'd be rad. That'd be pretty cool.
That would be cool.
That would be awesome.
I want to thank you guys for coming out. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I think as we have our offline conversations, as we're building these different scenarios, and we're doing more advocacy, and talking about my races and other people's races, I think there'll be times to get you back in and talk about one little facet, maybe something we talked about and go deeper, maybe something we didn't touch on today. But I think there's definitely some opportunities to keep this in a public forum like this, where we can talk about it and put it out and let people watch and hopefully get a few more people involved at certain things. So really thank you again for coming out. I know this seemed to be one of the trickier ones to schedule, to get attempted 3 people on the three guests. We got 2 of you at least. We'll get Truman out here next. We gave High Country quite a bit of love, so hopefully that will help ease the sting of missing it, but we'll get him out here too. But again, thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
We'll keep on this talk and keep going and keep doing what you're doing out there, because it's really awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us and working with us, and Aravaipa, right?
Hey, yes.
Aravaipa is supporting it. Thank you for Epic Rides as well, and all the other support that we've gotten out here. Ability 360, High Country, of course, and all the other countless people that have been volunteering and helping with support our programs and the growth of the sport. Trail builders and IMBA and all the people helping. There's an awesome trail up in Prescott that's going to be opening in 6 days, next
Really?
Friday.
Well, talk
Bean
more,
Peaks
quick.
Trails,
Okay.
right? So it's going to be about 1.5 mil by the time it's done. And they had adaptive in mind. Myself, Kaitlyn, Blake Hill, that's up there. Several adaptive riders been a part of the input over there to really make sure that that we have a place to ride up there on this new awesome network, right? So our great state's awesome. Have so many people to shout out. So many people can't think of right now, but super excited and for what the future brings.
Sure. Say the name again. Where was it? In Prescott?
It's Bean Peaks.
Bean Peaks.
Yep,
Okay.
Bean
Yeah.
Peaks is going to be
Excellent.
the trail. It's grand opening on May 31st, so come on out. There's going to be a High Country and 360 presence up there as well, so we'll
Okay.
have our AMTB crew out there,
Yeah.
along with everybody else who wants to come out and ride.
Awesome. Awesome. Before we leave, let everybody who is watching know where they can find you on Instagram or any other socials that you want to throw out there. Caitlin, why don't you start?
Yeah, you can find me at on Instagram at kverf, KVERF. And that's really all I pretty much do. I don't
Okay.
do a ton.
Very cool.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a few, but I mean, the main one, just too much to manage, right? So
Sure.
it's Quad on a Bike, the way it sounds, Quad on a Bike, all one word, at Instagram. If you don't have Instagram, there's a YouTube channel as well.
Okay.
More of the speaking stuff. But yeah, hit me up on Instagram if you ever want to ride. Questions about bikes, the sport.
Really
anything
quick,
like
and
that.
then anybody here in Arizona, we do have a Facebook page, the Adaptive.
Yes, that's a bit. Thanks for reminding us
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
here. So there's the Adaptive Bike Club.
Okay.
So the Arizona Adaptive Bike Club on Facebook, up to almost like 140 members now.
Okay.
And that's an all-inclusive bike club, right? So it's not just adaptive riders. That's the most important thing. So me and my buddy Jordan, who's an awesome character, started this thing. One of the first things I started when I got into AMTB, because I wanted to build a community.
Yep.
And it's adaptive riders, upright riders, people with disabilities, able-bodied, e-assist, no assist. We all ride together, get together, point each other in the right direction on different resources,
Yep.
whatever events going on, volunteering, and just riding together and having a beer and a burger afterwards. So it's all about community.
Yeah,
So
and
join
if anybody
that.
wants to come ride with us, like we post our rides and stuff on there.
Yeah,
So like
Perfect.
anybody's welcome to come ride. Like
Absolutely.
we'd love any and all support, and the more the merrier.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we talked about it earlier, but Big Woody is not only is our next ride, but it is where we're doing the test for the AMTB. So come out if you're an upright rider, if you are an adapted rider. We've got your class. We will get you in there. And we're gonna have fun up in the Pines next month. So I hope I see you guys there. I hope bring a few friends. Like I said, everyone is welcome. We definitely have plenty of room available for anybody who wants to come out and register and race up there. Fun weekend in the Pines. If you're a runner, we have trail runs on Friday and Saturday with our sister Aravaipa Runs. So there's events for you guys as well. People will be camping, staying in hotels, whatever they want, and spending the whole weekend. So come up and do that. It's going to be a blast. Again, thank you all for tuning in this time. It's been a pretty great conversation. As like I said, I think we're just scratching the surface of where this conversation can go and what. So we'll definitely have you guys back in different forums with the invisible Truman here. Whoever can make it, we'll get you guys back on the proverbial couch, and we'll talk some more about different things, because I think there's
We'll get some ladies.
so much.
We'll get some ladies here.
Yeah,
There we go.
ladies, Alex
There you
just
go.
left. Else she would have been here, but yeah.
Sorry.
no, it's quite all right. Thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.
Come to Big Woody, 1 month. Let's do it. Shred time.
Nice.